How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, what the bring to you is going to be beating the meta. Now, I feel like we have to start with what the meta looks like and how we understand the meta and what the meta shifts are. Now, I know a lot of people are really stressed out for the NAWCQ, but that doesn't mean that there's not more theory to be put in and really be able to figure out what we got to do to be successful. I hope this video is something that can really help you guide your way to being successful at the NAWCQ, because these are my thoughts going into the event, at least right now, and this could change, but they're going to be things that I think are really important when it comes to deck building and decisions to make when it comes to what you're going to cut and what you're going to add. So definitely go ahead and check out my sponsors over in RW, Cloud, Gem, Arla, Imperium, Dragonshield, and Grimoire down below in the description. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more educational content. Hey all, so you've definitely seen Arla on my channel lately, and I love board games, and I was overly thrilled when they came to me about their new game. This is something made by duelists for duelists, and I just love the fact that you have such diverse movement in a board game of all things, right? It just is a really cool addition and element to the game. You have a ton of different roles to choose from, and I really love the wizard because it gives you additional RNG as far as getting to cards that you really need to progress in the game. It's really cool, and as an English major, I just love the very first line here. Just a once peaceful kingdom has now fallen into chaos for the first time in 1,000 years. And, you know, this is going to be your own role to start your own journey to try to get things back in order. And, you know, the only question I have for you now is, are you ready to play Monster Cash Race? I appreciate all the support every single day. Thank you all so much. Let's hop right on into this video because I feel like this is a really important one to listen to when it comes to really preparing for this huge event. So there's a reason that the Mitsurugi deck with the Riw cards and even some adding Fiendsmith is doing so much work into the meta. It's the same reason why things like Orcus Mitsurugi are doing so well too. You just kind of gas through boards. And what's scary about this is you start with one engine, that fails. You go to the second engine, that fails, so you go to the third engine, and usually that cleans up. If that doesn't work, people are now just going for protos and then just locking you out of the game because you have no more responses for them. So that's where a lot of the decks right now are doing really well, and that's definitely going to be a winning formula moving forward. The Fiendsmith package being extremely small, the Riw package being thinned out, and then a lot of people playing a lot more Mitsurugi cards. But the other thing, though, is Nats is going to be won by the deck that's not necessarily the best deck, but the most consistent one. And what I mean by this is, like, be consistent in your deck building, but there's a lot of times where people are going to events and their deck is ideal, but when you go to play, there's a lot of times where you're picking up hands and you're like, oh, this doesn't play, and then you have to pass. So I think that if you can minimize the amount of times where you pick up a hand that's unplayable, you'll maximize the amount of times that you'll win, because I've been seeing at so many events, it's kind of like a back and forth thing that I see a lot where people are like, I bricked, they bricked, I bricked, they bricked. And that's kind of where the format is right now, where it's like, you're either just gassing through everything and putting up a crazy board, or you just kind of brick. There's a lot of bricks in decks right now, especially in the Mitsurugi pile. You got Magatama, you have Mirror, you have Serpent, you have the trap card when you're going first, and then sometimes if you are just maining it anyways, it's like not the greatest. You have Kusanagi, you don't really want to draw Saji. There's a lot of bricks and things that can make you just like not play the game. So it's definitely very awkward. So I think that the deck that gets the most like thinned out in places where it doesn't need to be, like with the excess cards, and it really starts playing a lot more power cards, and definitely is playing things like Cross Out, Talent, the Call by the Grave. These are all going to be the things that are going to be key pieces in being successful at the event. I do believe in a 40 card list, but we've seen decks in the past go up to things like 50. I remember over COVID watching Mike Thomas just destroy the meta with Dragon Link. He played 50 cards from what I remember, and it was just like a line and a half of hand traps, and the rest was just engine. And, you know, for me, I think that's something that we can really go back and look at, where I see a lot of people reevaluating what it means to deck build, where you don't always have to be at 40 cards to have a consistent deck. As long as you have a game plan, a lot of times you can go pretty far. Another thing that I want everyone to understand is that Bestials, Crow, and siding the one of Shifter if you can is going to be something that you see a lot of at this event. Whether it be against Malice hitting bodies that have already been banished once, which is really strong. If they're not on GWC and there's a white binder in the grave toward the end of their turn when they go to use the Echo Talker, and then you chain a Bestial, it's kind of crazy if you just banish the white binder, right? Because it's like, what are they going to do? It's a rough one to see happen. Some people are gonna have the firewall underneath the act code, but there's a good portion of people that won't. They're just gonna summon it and try to bring everything back. And if you just banish the white binder, they don't have it, and so that makes it really awkward to be able to play. A lot of people in Mitsurugi right now are just going tribute Mirakumo, tribute Habakiri, tribute Futso. They're just like tributing them all, and then they go to tribute the last one to go bring it back or something, and then you just like bestial them. And you'll see in the next slide, once you tribute them all and bring them back and you've already used prayer, Nib becomes insane because people are just not respecting it and they're just like tribute, 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 and then all of a sudden their board doesn't come back when they get rocked. So it's really popular right now to go ahead and play those cards like Nibiru and the Bestials because a lot of times people are just like playing too heavy into them. If you're worried about new decks coming out like the Lunalight support or like the Orcus support, this is where you can really lean on things like Bestials and Crow to make sure that you have an edge in those matchups because, of course, their graveyard is very precious to them in those matchups. So having a bunch of cards to just say, hey, we're not going to let you have that graveyard anymore is really impactful into this format. Same with anything that has the Fiendsmith package in it, whether it's a huge package or a small package. I think that it is very beneficial to have Bestials in your lineup right now because these cards have been kind of worn off for a bit where people haven't really played them, but now I think they're going to go full swing at Nats. The other one that I think that we're going to see a lot of at Nats is going to be Nibiru. A lot of people are summoning Protos, and a lot of times it's not always in the best spot, right? So you can kind of hold Nibiru until you see Protos and then drop it on the Protos before it can use the effect. You can go ahead and hit the mid boards of things like Lunalight before Liger. You can hit the Malice board. A lot of people are just kind of playing into this card because no one's really playing it right now. They're only playing 0 to 1. Maybe you'll see 2, but very rarely will you see 3. And then again, you have like everyone's tributing all their monsters in Mitsurugi. You have the Punk deck that can get hit by Nib pretty hard. So there's a lot of different indications in the format right now that we should be playing Nibiru. And I think that a lot of people are just kind of writing this off as they're like, well, you don't really get value out of it if you're playing against things like Mitsurugi or Raziel. But like you really do, especially when people aren't ready for rock. Card's kind of crazy. And I think right now is one of those weird conundrums where like everyone's saying, oh, that card's horrible. And then we're seeing a lot more people start topping with it in their deck list because the card is always going to be good in some capacity. Imperm's pretty good again. A lot of people cut it because they didn't really find value in it. And then we kind of got punished, as my teammate likes to say, because the second everyone was like, oh, Imperm's not that great, everyone starts playing Protos. And then what happens? You start getting Protos locked through like 14 draws of Molcharmy because you don't have Imperm in your deck. So then you're like, oh, I also don't play Nibiru. Crazy. So Protos lock, right? So now everyone's like leaning more toward Imperm and Nibiru because we don't want that to happen again, right? And it was crazy. A lot of people in my comment section were like, Protos isn't real. And I'm like, oh, you're insane. Like, look at any result of any tournament lately. You'll see Protos and Nestratos everywhere. Like, everywhere. So going into this next tournament, I'm like, you're still going to see it. Like, it's still very prominent. So make sure that you have a game plan for Protos because that card is going to be crazy. Also be very aware that if you are in a situation where you don't know what you're playing against and your opponent goes, you start, it's probably not Tenpai. It could be, but it's probably not. You're probably playing against Gem Knight. And that's something to really think about because you have to know what the game plan is to not just like die, right? And this is very reminiscent of when we saw a blind second Sword Soul with like main deck Lightning Storms, Dusters, Talent, Thrust. This is very, very similar. And this is something that you probably will see. The blind second list have done very well right now, and it's only against the people who are like really well versed in the deck. But the deck can still be a huge threat if you're not ready for it. So make sure that you understand that when this is around, you could be playing against Gem Knight if they're blind second. So Vanquish Soul is getting Holy Sue in the next set, and this is really important because it's something that you really got to understand. Beside the fact that they are actually main decking Kurakara now because it's a fire and it's a get out for a lot of things. But Holy Sue, if they're not using the effect to steal, this card represents 2 pops because it's going to be Fire Dark to special from your deck. So they're going to special summon a Rosin to a zone they need to so they can destroy your monster. The Rosin can search the Caesar. The Caesar can tag out the Holy Sue. We already know they have Fire and Dark. Holy Sue makes an Earth, so therefore the Caesar can now go ahead and non-targeting pop. So they're always going to be able to have 2 pops off of Holy Sue if they're not stealing. So if you see this card hit the board, just know that it does represent 2 destructions. If you haven't already seen my short about Orcus, you definitely should. This card is gaining a lot of traction, and it is very strong. All the viruses are very strong in their own regard. EEV or Deck Devi are both going to be very powerful, and you need to make sure that you have a game plan for these as well, especially if you're playing against Orcus, because this is where this is the most popular right now. If you enjoyed today's video, definitely go ahead and check out my Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Instagram, and always subscribe to the YouTube channel if you enjoyed the content. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll catch you in more videos down the road.